Thank you, Councillor Andy. I appreciate your contribution tonight. And I call Councillor Rutter.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay. I'm Councillor Lisa Rutter, one of the Brunswick Park Ward councillors. For as long as I can remember, since becoming a councillor in 2006, residents have been complaining about winter's haulage in Oakley Road South. The extra traffic they cause, the traffic chaos, the mess in the roads. I have continually represented my residents' concerns, and council officers have tried to talk with winter's haulage, but unfortunately the problems are still ongoing. When the council announced their proposal to relocate the Mill Hill depot to the Abbott site, obviously residents were very concerned, and I was equally concerned. With winter's haulage and the additional recycling trucks, there would be double the traffic and problems. Quite rightly, the residents in the area were against this proposal, and in order to show my objection to this proposal, I abstained from voting on this matter at council. I have since been working very hard liaising with council officers to try and find a suitable solution to this problem. I have listened to all the concerns raised by my residents, and taking those concerns into consideration, I asked the council officers to do a road survey as I wanted to know how many vehicles were going in and out of the site. The survey confirmed 250 winter's vehicle movements a day. I also asked the council officers to investigate other possible sites, but unfortunately none were suitable. There were valid reasons which I can respond to later if the committee wishes. Based on the above, I decided therefore to put my proposals to the council to ask if we could buy the Winters site in addition to the Abbott site. I also circulated my in touch to local residents, informing them of my campaign and proposals. My proposal is simply to get rid of Winters haulage. Once Winters is gone, it is a condition of their contract that they vacate the whole of the site. By doing this, we are getting rid of 250 Winters vehicle movements a day. If the Mill Hill depot take over the whole site, there will only be 126 vehicle movements a day, which will have a significant improvement straight away with regards to the traffic. The roads will be cleaner, and most of all, the recycling vehicles will be starting before the rush hour and will be back at the depot by 3 p.m. before schools finish. In conclusion, I believe that relocating the Mill Hill depot to the Abbott site and purchasing Winters haulage to acquire the whole site will not only make the situation along the road more manageable, but local councillors will also have oversight and deal with any issues quickly. I hope the committee agrees to my proposal. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. I'll ask you the same question I asked Councillor Hayes. Do you want me to score?
I do.
Thank you. Very clear. Thank you very much. Councillor Rosenberg.
Councillor Rutter, since we're on the same side, it would be wrong of me to put my own opinions to you, so I would like to know whether you agree with some of the points that have been raised by the Labour councillors this evening. I'm quoting verbatim from what I've heard this evening. Councillor Rawlins said, it's probably an advantage not having Winters there. Do you agree with that or disagree?
Absolutely.
Councillor Philip Cohen said, it might help a bit. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree.
And your ward colleague, Councillor Juanidi, said, my residents don't want Winters. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree.
I'm glad to see that there is such unity in this council.
Thank you, Councillor Rosenberg. Councillor Moore and Councillor Coakley-Webb.
Two very simple questions, if I may. The first is it's obviously a more political one. Do you recognise that by abstaining at the vote at council, rather than opposing the Abbott's proposal, a vote which would have stopped the project dead, you actually let residents down, irrespective of the situation that is now the case with Winters? And secondly, if I may, so that you can answer both of them, but we wouldn't be here discussing Winters if the project was off the table. And they, as we heard, they would have gone anyway. The speaker earlier, one of the speakers earlier cited dust and noise, etc. at 7 o'clock in the morning. She wanted us to go at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I'd ask you, how much earlier will the recycling trucks be using the site if it's going to be an improvement on Winters being on that site?
Right, well, your first question, I abstained because that was the correct thing to do, and we was legal.
Carry on, Councillor. Carry on.
And you as the Labour leader would know that, you know, obviously residents do not understand the political process, and by me abstaining, that was the correct way for me to do.
Can I ask the the public to let councillors speak, please? You've had a chance. Councillor Rutter, carry on.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Chair, I'm sorry. So that I could continue and provide the residents with the best solution.
And there was a second.
And the second question about the dust, was it the noise?
It was dust, and you gave the impression was the statement made earlier by one of the speakers.
Yeah.
Well, she was asking us to go to the site at 7 o'clock in the morning because that's, you know, there was dust and noise and vehicle movements at that point. If you are, I'm asking whether you think that when recycling vehicles are on site, they would actually be moving earlier than that. They might be creating the same amount of dust, but you might not have vehicle movements earlier than 7 o'clock.
I don't know the exact times, but they would certainly be before the traffic, when it starts, when they all sort of start with working hours and everything. But most of all, I mean, the recycling trucks are not dirty and horrible like the Winters trucks. Yeah, we all know how dirty and horrible Winters trucks are and the mess they create on the roads. Our recycling trucks are not like that, they're normal lorries.
Could I just make a small comment about your statement? As leader of the Labour Group, actually as a local councillor, one of the things that I think is important is actually enabling local residents to understand the process. And I don't want an answer to that, that's maybe a statement.
Councillor Wright, Councillor Cohen, Councillor Cook. Sorry, Councillor Cook, I think you put your hand up. Yes, you did, so you're next.
Okay.
Then Councillor Wright, Councillor Cohen, Councillor Cook. Thank you.
I'll put it just in short, brief, rather than just do it, which I'll just do one at a time, but in short things. Do you agree that now that certainly we know that Winters was not put on the consultation map that was used at North London Business Park, that was a bit disingenuous to people to, and if anything, the timing of that seems a bit wrong, that if you're telling people this is the plan 1 minute, but the next minute it could be something else. So I'm asking you, did you think that something should have been done or needs to be done again if this goes through to actually inform people of the full extent of the site? And do you agree that from what we know from Winters' plans for their business, that they would have been going anyway, albeit that we might not know exactly when within that period they would be going, but they would be going anyway. So that first bit is about the map of consultation and the fact that they were going anyway. Yeah.
First of all, I've been listening to these concerns, as I said, they've been going on for such a long time. No other sensible solution has come forward. When I heard about Winters wanting to retire, I decided to ask Council, can we look into this? Is there any way that we could purchase? Is there any way, what can we do? I didn't have the answers, but I had the idea, I had the way to think something for my residents, because I knew how upset they were. I've been dealing with them. I've been councillor since 2006, so I know how upset my residents have been.
And a bit about sorry, I just have 4 short questions. I just don't want to get them in one go.
Yeah, you can fire them off. And then,
just a bit about the map, considering what happened with what was shown at North London Business Park. I felt, but I just want to know what you feel, that if residents, again, have got this huge trust problem, if what they saw at the business park, in terms of showing them what they think the site will be like, is now going to be different, because now we're suggesting that the site would be even bigger, when that wasn't on the consultation over the Friday and Saturday.
I agree, there's a lot of uncertainty, and we haven't got all the answers, but at the moment, this is a proposal. which I've put forward, and this is something that you as the committee will discuss, and these uncertainties will become realities, and hopefully, we can go on from there.
First of all, one thing about what we're proposing as well, to pay them what is a short number of years in order to basically take their lease off their hands. It's a lot of money. And in what we're always told is that a period of austerity, plus what we know, and we can only refer to as a substantial figure in the other papers this evening, I'm not sure how, and we'll have to maybe even ask officers, but from your point of view, where does value for money stop and start, given that we are talking huge sums of money involved here for what is a relatively short space of time when the lease would have been finished anyway?
Well, again, this is something that needs to be discussed, and obviously we do a closed meeting and discuss this. But at the end of the day, you've got to weigh up the risks. What would happen if we didn't? What would happen if somebody else purchased it and you had another winter's haulage creating the same problem? Would that be better? At least this way, we are in control, the councillors are able to deal with the issues.
That might be your rationale, but I think that would then be sending a signal to people all over the borough where they think they've got something noisy happening in their area, to say that council has got an unlimited pot of money to buy any company out that's making a bit of noise, because we'd rather leave it vacant for the duration of the lease, because that is better for the residents, never mind the amount of money it might cost to do it. When we come to look at actually what the residents don't want, which is mainly the Abbott's depot, they don't want it full stop, we will have to recognise, surely, that even though we know that the heavy vehicles from the depot will go out early because the bin lorries start on an early run, but not only that, the workers that come to the site are also going to have to arrive very early. So would you agree that whichever way you look at it, and whether it's with this extra site or not, that there is going to be certainly more early traffic along that road entering into that site than would ever have been the case before?
No, I disagree.
But how will the workers get there otherwise? They're on the
Can we allow the councillor to answer the question?
I mean, the facts is there. 250 as opposed to 126. That tells me there's less. Taking that into consideration, if you had the winter's haulage there, you get, obviously, the workers, they need to drive, they need to park. But with 126 of our trucks, there's obviously going to be less. That's the maths.
The wrong figure.
Can we have the next question? We've got other councillors who also
No,
like
you
to...
carry on.
Okay, Councillor Wright, Councillor Cohen, Councillor Trooks.
Actually, I think most of what I wanted to ask has been covered, but I just want to make two points. I think generally with these types of haulage companies, with the haulage company that is there at the moment, I imagine most of their movements are at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. They tend to collect and then deliver around that sort of time of day, so probably a great deal of the movements will not, the timings of those movements will be fairly similar. And it comes on to the point I wanted to ask you. Again, could you just tell me, I know you've said it a few times, but by us buying and taking an interest in the winter site, we don't know what will happen in the future with this winter site. Somebody else might buy it, intensify it, or reduce, but we only know the way it's being used at the moment.
Yes.
And I think that's really the point that we have to focus on. The number of movements at the moment and the number of movements that will result from your suggestion and what we will consider, again, is a significant reduction. I understand it's about 50% reduction.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think that the main, from what I've heard this evening, that a lot of the concerns of the residents are the number of movements of vehicles.
Yes.
So I understand that your proposal that you are suggesting, and it can only be on the facts, on what we know, not what we conjecture, is that this will produce a significant reduction in those movements.
Absolutely. And that's why I thought this would be a good proposal, and I hope the committee agrees.
Thank you. Councillor Coyne, then Councillor.
Councillor Rutter, I appreciate you want to help your residents. We were told by officers that this deal was commercially sensitive. That we were in negotiations with Winters to the extent that Winters are not named in the council papers, agenda. You put out, issued a public leaflet naming Winters and also claiming credit for the proposal. I would suggest, or would you agree that that's slightly injudicious at best, but possibly poor judgment, at the same time as we're being told that we couldn't name Winters?
There's another clarification here. What has been released and what is publicly available is a map which outlines the lease area. And that came out, I think it was Friday actually, but that's a public piece of information.
That was after the leaflet came out.
That's a public piece of information about the lease boundary on the land, and you can easily determine from that that it is Winters. I don't think the legal advice I've received is actually the name Winters certainly is not commercially sensitive, but the figures, the financial figures are. So I've got a point of order, I'd just like to clarify that. So
Why is
therefore you
name Winters in the papers then?
It's not because the lease is with Waste Operations. That's the formal title of that lease. That's what we're buying out. Now, I'd just like to make that point. So as a councillor, you feel you can answer that question if you want to, but the legal advice we can give is that you can name the name Winters.
Yes. I called it Winters, but
Yeah, it could be silly, not people who want to do this.
everybody knows it is Winters, so it's
Thank you. Councillor Coe.
Councillor Rutter, if the council buys out Winters, will you be in favour of the council depot moving to the Abbott's depot site?
will I be in favour of?
The council depot moving to the Abbott's depot site?
The Mill Hill depot, moving
From Mill Hill
From
to
Mill Hill
Abbott's
to the
depot
Abbott's.
off Oakley Road South?
well, yes, I mean, the Mill Hill depot relocating to the Abbott's depot.
Right, so
Yes.
you will be in favour of that if this proposal for the council buying the Winters lease, that goes through, you will be in favour of that?
Well, the whole idea, the proposal is that we hopefully go ahead and buy the Abbott's and the Winters site, so that the Mill Hill depot relocates to the site.
Yeah, I'm aware
Yes.
that is the proposal on the papers. I'm trying to be clear about your view on the matter, because your vote alone ensured that this issue is still alive, and the residents in your ward are clearly unhappy about it. And from what we've heard from speakers tonight, just buying out Winters would not make them happy.
As I said when I read my statement, I was not in favour of it to start with, because obviously my residents had concerns regarding the extra traffic. So if we have Winters and we also have the Mill Hill depot relocating there, it's double the traffic, double the worries and concerns. No, I would not have wanted that. But hopefully with my proposal to get rid of Winters, then it wouldn't be a problem. Then relocating the Mill Hill depot, it suddenly becomes not a problem.
Would you welcome another opportunity to put a vote on record at full council to make it even clearer what your position is?
Depends what we put at council, obviously, and I don't know. We can't, say what's going to happen at council. We can't answer that.
Can you remind us of the heavy vehicle figures which have been bandied about here? You've mentioned Winters at 250, and you've mentioned the council depot operation at 126, 127. How many other heavy vehicle movements are there in and out of that access point from adjacent sites?
Yes. Well, there was a survey done, and this survey actually made sure that it's separated, because we do have the other timber yard as well, vehicles. And obviously it gave statistics for each, and they made sure that the 250 are the Winters vehicles. But obviously, we do have the timber yard, and that is another problem which I know my residents have, because sometimes those trucks park in the road and they block and they cause traffic and concerns. That I know as well. But hopefully, we can look into that at some point and try and find a way forward to improve that.
It's your ward. I'm sure you know that it's not just a timber yard. There's another skip hire company
Yes.
and other companies
Yes.
there.
Yes.
And
All those statistics were separate. All those statistics were separate, and I'm sure they can be
yeah,
provided.
and those other uses and those other heavy vehicle movements will remain even with this proposal about winters. Will they not?
Absolutely. Yes, but we are getting rid of most of it. Hopefully, if we get rid of winters, we are reducing the traffic. And at the end of the day, the residents' concerns were mainly the heavy traffic, the filth that's coming off these trucks, the winters, that are causing a lot of the mess in the roads, and the toing and froing all the time. So it's improvements.
So you just said getting rid of most of it. We haven't given the figure for the other movements. How many other movements do you think there are?
Again, I haven't got those statistics, but they can be provided. But
Well,
yes,
can I give you the
we
figures
do
that
need-
officers have given to me?
yes,
Winters is not most of the vehicle movements, it's half of the vehicle movements, and the other half stays. Is that surprising?
no, I understand there's still going to be those movements as well, but we are still significantly improving the problem.
Thank you.
And what's your view about the non-vehicle movement aspects of this? For instance, the noise and the visuals from the flats in Cockney's Grove.
The noise of
The noise of the council depot in an elevated position on the Abbott's Depot site, which would be level with halfway up the flats on Cockney's Grove, your residence.
well, I don't know the answer to that question, but noise obviously is going to be taken into consideration. But I don't think there's been an issue with the Mill Hill depot regarding noise, or smells, or vermin, or anything of the sort. So I don't think it will be a problem. And in fact, if it does happen, obviously, we have modern facilities and improvements, more modern than what's been happening at the Mill Hill, so I'm sure it will be negligible.
If Winters stops running its skip hire business in the area, do you think that the need for skip lorries in the general area will remain, and some other business will expand to take out the site?
Well, if we don't do anything, I'm sure some other Winters haulage probably wants to take the site. And do the residents want that? And I think the answer is no.
Councillor, thank you. I've got a question for you, actually two. Do you not think that by enlarging the space through which, by which we can spread the depot, that issues about noise, what is situated nearer or further away from residents can be, have more options in terms of design and layout?
Absolutely.
Because it's extended
As I said, we have the opportunity to make them modern facilities that all these things can be taken into consideration. There's installations, there's all sorts of things that you can do now. I'm not an expert builder, I don't know these things, but I'm sure, with all the updates, products and building facilities they have, all this will be incorporated.
Thank you. And then finally, can you tell me, and certainly like the committee public gallery, over the last few months, how many meetings you've had, roughly, what sort of issues you've been discussing with officers, and what issues have you been talking to the leader and I about, concerns, and what have you been doing to sort of make this an improvement for the area?
Absolutely. Well, we've had 3 meetings, and in those meetings we've been exploring all the possible sites, and I think everybody has got all the details, but I'm happy to read them out if people want me to. But obviously it's been quite a lot of work, trying to find another site. And obviously, once they've been looked into, there have been issues, what with planning, what with the suitability of the land, and it's just not been possible. So that's unfortunate, but we did look at a lot of sites. We did a lot of surveys, and the officers did the surveys, triple checked to make sure they had their figures accurate, and that's where we are now. And this is, based on all the information I received, and the rumour of Winters, retiring and everything else, I took that opportunity to put the proposal forward. I didn't hear of any other sensible solution from anybody. So that's what I thought. And just to add to that, Chair, in my recent surgery, I had 20 residents who came. And just for the record, Councillor Ian, there was, from the surgery, there was one person there who was in favour of my proposals. So I think I just wanted to put that on record.
Councillor, we thank you for your contribution this evening. We now move on to the items under proper, so you're welcome to take your seat. Now, just to clarify, there are two parts of this report. One is noting the progress on the decision already made by full council to pursue the Abbots Depot, and that purchase will be subject to planning permission being granted. If planning permission is not granted, that purchase cannot go through because that's the basis on which it's been permitted. The second part is, as Councillor Rutter said, to buy the Winters lease so that they cease operating there, and that land can also be added to the site to be used for a council depot. That is the substantive item, if you like, that we tonight are deciding to, or not deciding, to go ahead with. I've not got anything else to add, actually. We've had a very thorough debate. We've had an hour and 40 minutes of debate on this issue, and whilst that has been a long time, I welcome it because this is an important thing for the local area. It's also important for the borough, and I think it's important we get the facts out, we flush out the questions, we flush out the concerns, we have a debate, and clearly there are different views in the room, and that's to be welcome. So I certainly won't go into introduce the report any further. I won't ask officers to introduce. I think we'll straight to members' questions. I would like to open though with if Councillor Jasinski could tell us, you have the depot currently in your ward, and could you tell us whether you have any complaints from residents, or are there any issues that you're aware of from the current council depot?
I'm a relatively new councillor. I've only been Mill Hill councillor since last May. During that time, I've not received one complaint from any resident relating to the Mill Hill depot.
That's useful. So thank you very much. So, if Councillor Coakley went through indicators first.
Yeah. So I just think trying to compare the two locations when it is such a narrow road that was basically a country lane outside what is Abbots Depot, it's not quite comparing like with like. It was a lane with villages and farms, and the width of the road has never been, and it seems to me impossible to expand it anyway, just on the size of the road outside the depot. I'd just like to add a couple of things, and whether it's Mr. Hooton can respond to this, and I just want to clarify this, that when there was over the various responses and the questions that we've asked about vehicle movements, when you came up with the movements over the number of days, which is really just to try and find out how much vehicle movements Winters were contributing to this. But when you replied to one of the emails, which I think was to Councillor Cook, you mentioned that you did it on 3 separate days over a 2-week period, all weekdays, that the figures provided are on average, obviously. But it was not possible to separate out the Brogan and the GBN numbers from the counts that were undertaken. So how does that impact on the numbers that were provided? So what I'm trying to figure out is, are you meaning that all the heavy vehicles that came out of the depot at that current time were all counted? Or you were saying that you actually counted which ones were Winters, but you can't tell from the others that were counted which ones were Brogan? Is that what you meant from that?
That's correct. So to summarise, that sort of average of around about so 500 vehicles across that entire site. 250 of them were in respect of the Winters site. 130 were in respect of the Fitzgerald and Burke builders merchant, which is the top, and then the remaining 120 are a number of companies, 2 or 3 companies that operate next to the Winters site. And we haven't managed to separate all of those out, but we're separating Winters from the remaining.
So we've got other skip company or companies on site already, apart from Winters.
There's another builders merchant. There is GBM, which is another skip company as well.
Okay. So if Winters move out, what is to stop the other skip company seeing an opportunity to increase its business?
I mean, I think there are a couple of elements to that question. I mean, firstly, that other skip company that I mentioned operate in quite a small and quite constrained site. So clearly, all of the trucks that Winters have would not simply be able to move to the site next door. And the second point I think I would also note, which is that Winters, as I think Councillor Rawlings earlier mentioned, have operations elsewhere in the region more widely, and clearly quite a number of their customers will remain, their customers, even if their operations are somewhere very, very different. So I think overall it's very unlikely that all of that business will move from one site to another.
No, I'm not saying that all of it would, but I'm just saying that it seems to me an unknown quantity, and that given that if another skip company is already on the site, it would just seem sensible from their point of view, if they see an opportunity, even if it's not to completely match what Winters did, if they were looking to see that there's business there to be had, it would be stupid for them not to take that business on board. How much of it they can take on board, I have no idea, but from a business point of view, I would think that they'd be looking to say, well, there's a gap in the market here, and if we've got any space at all to try and fill some of it, we might as well do it.
Can I do whilst that may happen, another company with another 200 movements could move into the Winters site as well. That clearly this will stop that happening.
Sure.
So even if we Councillor Walden said, in 5 years' time they're probably going to go. Well, exactly, this is going to happen anyway. What we're doing is, if you like, we're protecting that Winters site from being used for another 200, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, so we're protecting it just for the number of years until the lease would have run out anyway, or Crossrail 2 would have needed it anyway.
Well, not necessarily, because the Crossrail issue is in a minimum of 10 years' time, and they may not need a slither of the land that is nowhere near actually these parts. So again, we're speculating. And actually, Network Rail may renew the lease, even with Winters, because it's all rumour and, they might go, they might not, and when. Or they might give it to a new company. So what we're doing is taking control. I mean, we can speculate, it's 10 o'clock, but what could happen? But what we know tonight, if we approve this thing, we will take control of that piece of land.
And is it also true, and I don't know if Mr. Hook would be best to reply to this, is that because, from what I've understood and all I've been told, is that because this is a lease for a relatively short space of time that we would be buying out to get the land, that because it is a very short space of time, that anything that happens with the proposed Abbott's depot to move onto the Brunswick Park site, that by gaining the land from Winters, it is highly unlikely that we would build anything on there at all because of the shortness of the lease time. So all we could possibly do is expand car park space. It wouldn't be that there'd be a rejigging of, well, that's where the salt farm could go, or that's where the bulking facility, or that's where we could build office, simply because this is a very short-term lease. So we wouldn't be sensible to take that risk. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
So the usage of the land, what is best in the short term for how we...
Yeah, so we're paying a premium, a hell of a big premium, plus an annual rental for a parcel of land that really we're not intending to do much with in terms of building anything at all on it. It's just a question of this, for a few years, takes some of the vehicles off. We don't know if the other business on the site will or trying to pick up any of the business, but it's just to placate for what is a short number of years some of the vehicles on the site which will be replaced by other vehicles on the site.
So, when in looking at the overall design of the depot facility, some of that site will be office space. It might be a sort line. It might be sort of physically constructed buildings, if you like. But of course, you've also got access into the site. You've got staff car parking. You've got parking vehicles. So there's particular elements of the site that will not require construction. So therefore, within the context of the overall site, you know, this element will be incorporated into that, and that answers your question.
Councillor Ruswick, you indicated after Councillor Coaching-Webb, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I welcome the motion. We've been told tonight that democracy is a Greek word. We don't really know the meaning of the word democracy. Well, demos and kratos, right? Rule of the people. It seems to me we've got exactly that. We've got a great example of how rule of the people happens in Barnet. We had a set of proposals come to this committee that would not have made anyone in the area worse off. Nonetheless, there were still concerns. And of the 3 local elected councillors, one of them came up with a potential improvement that no one else thought of and pushed it through and took it to the council officers and came up with a plan that is in effect a compromise between various different interests at stake that will make people somewhat better off. I'm making a modest claim because Councillor Rawlings doesn't want me to make extreme claims, but it will make some people somewhat better off. Now that is democracy in action, and it is our job as the strategic voice in this to balance up people's needs, and I think we're right to be doing that in this way. And indeed, if you listen very carefully to what the Labour councillors are saying, they're saying they don't want winters. Councillor Rutter's colleague said that he doesn't want winters. Other Labour councillors have said the same thing. So I think that these are people who, to be honest, won't take yes for an answer. I do accept Councillor Coakley-Webb. She clearly doesn't want to take winters off the land. She has other issues, so there is a difference of opinion on the Labour side. But on this side, I think it's quite clear that this is a good solution for the residents of the whole.
Thank you, Councillor Ruswick, for that. Councillor Wright, Councillor Coaching-Webb. And then we did have, after that, a question on value for money, which I specifically want Mr. to comment on also.
If I could feed into that, and something that Councillor Coakley-Webb said, I think what we have mentioned earlier is that this site is becoming available, the winter site, and there's no potential use for it. It's likely to be vacant, and that's something that's been said. But I think Councillor Coakley-Webb has made a very important point, that if the current use of that site disappears, there will be another company that may well want to come in and fill that void, which means that there will be continual movements of vehicles. So there's 2 points there, that by somebody filling that void, there will be further vehicle movements. And also, as Councillor Coakley-Webb said, that given that this site has a potential commercial value, we've got to feed that into what we're paying for the site and what we would potentially want and what it's potentially worth. And I think it's a point well made, and I think we should look at that and take that on board when we're considering the value of this site.
Can I just wait?
Thank you. No, you were next, so
I'm
you fire away.
just trying to make sure that it's the right sort of position. What I wasn't saying is that if we don't pay out this phenomenal sum for a number of years, that someone else might come in and do the same thing. What I'm saying is, if there's already a skip company on site that's not moving, that is there, it would be silly and to ignore the fact that if they know that another skip company on site is going, and I have no idea how much space they've got or how much they can organise their vehicles in and out, but I'm saying that the other skip company already on site that is not planned to move could be looking to increase their business, and it's them that could try and plug some of the business that Winters would have been dealing with.
That could happen anyway.
It could, but what I'm saying is it's no point saying on one hand we're taking out 250 movements if the other skip company that's on the site already is already working out, well hang on, if we start at such a time, and if we finish at such a time, and if we get a few more of this and a few more of that, it means that there's a bit more business there for us to make because the other one has gone. So we can't stop them deciding what they want to do to try and make hay from the fact that a similar company providing a similar service is going, for them not to say, well, hang on, we've got an opportunity here to make more out of it. Exactly, the value for money thing worries me greatly, and especially that, you know, some of it is in the white papers, some of it is in the blue papers, as to considering how the months and years fly by so quickly, as to how much we should actually be considering spending for what, in the scheme of things, is not a long period of time. My instinct now, and I suppose you want to deal with stuff here and then go into blue papers at a later stage if people want to, but I'm telling you, my instinct here at the moment, and we can discuss it either before if you want to vote, but my instinct here is that because of the enormity, as to how this impacts on the people that already have quite clearly stated that this is not what they wanted in their area, they might appreciate a few less lorries if Winters went for a short space of time, but we're only talking a short number of years. We're talking a huge sum of money in order to achieve that. And my instinct is that this is such an important thing for all councillors that this needs to be discussed at full council.
Okay.
So
we were expecting, we were fully expecting you and your colleagues to refer this to full council. But we need to make a decision first, and we've not made that decision yet. But thank you for indicating that. I think my point is that when Winters do decide to leave, if in a few years' time or sublet or whatever, then because Crossrail isn't until at least 2025 in this area, if at all, then another 10-year lease could be granted to a company very similar to Winters, and that's the problem. Whereas we stepping in now would prevent that. I'm conscious of time. We've got other items to plough on with. Councillor Cook, if you could be brief, and I would also like Mr. Hooton to talk about the value for money side of it, and then I would like, as you would like a debate at full council also, to then make a decision.
Just wondered whether there was any better information about when Crossrail 2 will be making decisions and when land in the area might be required. Because I would have thought that given that Crossrail 2 has the Mayor of London's endorsement to come to New Southgate and to use land in this area for train stabling, that the land currently owned by Network Rail, which includes the Winters land that we're talking about, will be first to be required, even if it's a while before trains are stabled there. It's an obvious place to put the construction depot for the work which will be going on across London. So that's my gut feeling. I wondered if we had any better information from TfL about that. So how long after 2020 is this land likely to be available?
It's a very valid question. Mr. Hooton, do you have any more information on TfL's plans at this stage?
No, I mean, as you can imagine, we don't have firm information at this stage, given where Crossrail 2 is in its sort of journey from sort of concept to reality. The paper sets out the communications we've had from TfL, which indicates that the site under consideration will not be required until 2025 at the end. Now that is at the earliest. Now it may be that process takes longer. What they've said is it won't take any less time than 2025. So that is all the indications we have at the moment. Now clearly, in due course, they will TfL and Crossrail will develop further proposals. We'll be able to understand that in more detail. But it's important for us to get that assurance from Crossrail and TfL that period from now to 2025 at a minimum was available to enable us to to consider the depot relocation plan.
Can I just be clear, does 2025 apply to the Abbott's Depot site or the Winter site or both?
The 2025 refers to the Abbott site. The Winter site is potentially beyond 2020, as you're well aware, that network rail lease ends in 2020. Beyond that point in time, there is at the moment a risk that the TfL will require that site. So all we have a guarantee, and again I think it's set out in the paper, the only guarantee we have for the Winter site is that we will be able to have that lease up until 2020. And beyond that, we cannot guarantee.
Okay, I think we've exhausted this topic tonight. There's been a lot of debate here amongst ourselves, with members of the public, and with ward councillors and indeed neighbouring ward councillors. So I'd now like to go to the vote. All those in favour of noting the progress on the project and approving the purchase of the lease as recommendations 2, please show. All those against? Abstentions? Okay, that is carried. Yes, and that is noted already. Okay. So that decision shall be referred to full council in April. Oh, we need to state reasons.
Because of the enormity of the sums of public money that are involved in securing a site in a relatively short space of time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Well, as I say, I make no apologies of that. It's an important decision. It's the Borough's Waste Depot, and we do, Council Depot, and we do need to have a thorough discussion on this. Moving on then to, there's another item of public interest, which is item 13, Dawes Lane. I propose to take that next. So I do know there are members in the audience interested in Dawes Lane.